there anything what can actually be disappointing about success?
The number one thing in terms of the disappointing about success is when you get wrapped up in your ego.
Can anybody be a leader?
Yes, if they work on themselves first. Your emotions are energy in motion, and when your emotions are all over the place and your nervous system is not rationally thinking, shall we say, you're not going to be a good leader. Because if you get triggered by other people because they have different opinions, or you get triggered by people who are trying to ask you things in the moment, and you're not able to balance that through, rational thinking and balancing your emotions, balancing your stress, it's going to make it very difficult to be a leader.
From all the people you worked with, what are the biggest mistakes people keep making, not being aware of them in the present moment?
The first biggest mistake that I notice in a lot of people is the difference between revenue and profitability. They started a business up and very rapidly made £1 or £2 million. One of my friends actually did this. He didn't plan in advance of the infrastructure to be able to take the new clients that were coming on board so rapidly.
What part of personality helped you start leadership the most?
My father, he worked his way up, and his last job was president of Fidelity Investments. So he was an inspiration to work towards. And like all of us, I have to say, all of us in some way or form, we want to impress our dads. We love our dads. They're our superheroes.
Who were you before leadership, before titles, before speaking on the stages? What fear shows to high-level people on higher stages that they're not ready for? How do you make decisions nowadays? How important really speed is in making decisions? Guys, I need to say something. We're building something really special here. The level of guests, the conversations, the depth we are going in week by week, it's becoming better and better, more and more valuable. But there is one thing which doesn't make any sense. Almost 90% of you who keep watching the episodes, who keep coming back week by week, are not subscribed yet. Which means one thing, you're not fully part of that journey. I get it, it's one click, it feels small, but for us, and myself personally, means everything. It tells the algorithm that we matter, it helps us reach bigger guests, and create better and better podcast episodes, which at the end of the day are equally for myself like for yourself. They bring the value. So if there was ever a moment to support us, I please you to do it right now. Check if you're subscribed, and if you're not, it's completely free. It doesn't mean to you that much like it means to us. Just click the subscribe button, and by that way, you will help us grow bigger and bigger. And what I can promise you is that me and my team will continue making improves, and very soon move ourselves to the real studio where we will record even more powerful episodes with same and new guests. Check, are you subscribed? And subscribe right now. Thank you. All right. Doug Gordon, thank you so much for coming today to speak with me on this podcast. And if people were just listening to us, everything we spoke before, they would say, oh my God, this guy started. But no, we're starting right here. First of all, who were you before leadership, before titles, before speaking on the stages? How would you say, who was Doug Gordon?
Well, Nick, firstly, thank you for having me on the show. In terms of where when I grew up in a family that was lovely family, 2 brothers and a dad. My dad was an orphan, actually. So his dad died when he was 2. His mum died when he was 6. So he had a really hard childhood. But he worked his way up, and he worked very hard, and he was a very clever guy. And he worked from nothing, like literally nothing. He had government support for his education and everything like that. And then he ended up as a multimillionaire. So he kind of taught me the values of working hard, determination, focus, and also being able to communicate effectively with other people as well. So that really gave me a good kind of groundwork to work from. And during my time, he was also quite a, obviously, competitive guy. Is very good for business sometimes. And that competition put me into sport. So in sport, I played the equivalent of playing for Chelsea or Barcelona in hockey, as in field hockey, when I was a kid. So I was always very much into that. And the leadership actually probably started there because I became a captain of the teams. I actually managed a team and all that kind of stuff. And that helped in terms of learning how to communicate effectively in a team and to be able to get people to work together towards collective goals. Then went to university, studied engineering actually. And while studying engineering, I must admit, I was too much enjoying playing hockey and sport and chasing girls rather than actually doing the engineering. and we were put into project management teams, and those project management teams generally were made up of guys within the they were made up of guys within the engineering facility, and a lot of them were foreigners from the likes of China and Japan who were very studious. So they would do all the work in the projects, and they'd say to me, right, well, you've obviously got the language skills, so you're going to speak and deliver the presentation. That's your part of the project. And it was normally about 30% of the project, so it kind of worked out fair. So they would do all the work, I'd learn everything they put together, and then I'd present it, and we'd do very well. But that taught me communication skills, presentation skills to enable me then to get into sales. And I went into the financial world, started off at the bottom in terms of customer service, got into then, sales support, sales management, sales director role, then head of sales and marketing of one of the biggest fund managers in Europe. And that's where the leadership came from. And then with the radio show and multiple, leadership coaching with the likes of Dell, Samsung, JP Morgan, Okiko, Leinster Rugby Club, many others, I learned my skill in terms of being able to help different leaders in different industries as well. So that's basically how it put me where I am today in terms of leadership.
That's quite a journey, man, because whenever you come to the salesperson would tell you, I know how to help you. We are having perfect solution for you. But in fact, you have a great product, you have a great offer, you know that you can help so many people, but yourself still inconsistent. Why it's like that? Because you misunderstand two basic principles. And let me tell you something, it's not economy, it's not war, it's not current president or political situation, none of that. Because simply you and money were always on the same planet Earth. You never left the planet, and most likely money never did it, right? The only two ways are the reason why it's like that. Number one thing which can be the reason is that you don't know the right way of presenting your offer. Number two can be that you don't know the proper way to whom to present it, which boils down to you don't know to whom to sell, or you don't know the right way to speak to the people to whom to sell. I have been scaling in the past 10 years multiple of my own companies and companies of my clients from $0 to $200,000 in sales, being in China, selling physical perishable items like food and beverages, and without speaking Chinese, without writing Chinese, and without knowing how to sell to Chinese people. But I knew one core principle, and this is that psychology of people never change. So I knew to whom to sell, and I knew exact way how to present my offer to them. I was scaling up my digital businesses to hundreds of thousands of dollars, again understanding two core principles: to whom to sell, so who can benefit from my offer, and the way, when, and how to present them my offer. And there is no magic and there is no secret behind that. It's really easy to understand it. But in order to this video be very short, I put all of this together in the school community, which is completely for free. You can join it right now, clicking on the link below in the description box, and you can discover these two principles. It will take you a couple of days to figure it out yourself and to practice it, and then your sales will become consistent. Until then, see you in the school community. Bye for now. You said that your father came as from the governmental support right to the multiple millions. You definitely prove and broke one of the belief that where they said that rich people kids are usually not becoming successful because they have been given by everything by their parents. And it's really nice to see that this actually shaped you pretty much by who you are today. Tell me, when you was first time starting to do this leadership in the hockey, what age we are speaking about?
Oh, so well, I was a soccer player before that. I had
Okay.
a soccer team, which I actually started up myself and played in a Sunday league. We actually ended up playing in the Epsom and Newell Park Boys League back. It was
Wow.
under 14 level. But my father and also my uncle played hockey, and in fact, my uncle played for Great Britain, and he was the captain of Ireland as well. So that kind of got me an interest in hockey. I started playing hockey on the side, and then gradually got more and more into it from the age of 15. And then by the time I was in school, I actually went to school in senior school in Belgium. At the time of age of 17, 18, and 19, I was captain of the first team of hockey for the school. And then I started playing for a club as well, which is one of the top junior clubs in Belgium. And then I got actually, then by 18, 19, then I was asked to play for one of the top clubs in Belgium, actually in a senior adult level. So that was where I really started getting into that. And then the great thing about hockey is that you can play it anywhere. And also the great thing about hockey is that obviously girls play it as well. So there's mixed hockey. You can have a good social atmosphere for it as well. And I would love and I would work towards, in terms of fitness, in terms of eating well, sleeping well, everything
Mm.
was geared towards that game of hockey. Either if it was in university, it was on a Wednesday and a Saturday as well. So yeah, I was passionate about it, and I played right up. I'm 51 now. I played right up until I was 42, and absolutely loved it. I would love to go back, but I think my knees wouldn't help if I did.
Yeah, probably they will. Probably you have all this memory muscle even now because you did it for quite a long time. Um, what part of personality helped you start leadership the most? Was this something driven to prove to yourself or to your father or to somebody that you can do it as well? Or was something else what shaped you actually?
Now that's a great question, Nick, and I think. Well, my father, yeah, I mean, he worked his way up, and his last job was president of Fidelity Investments, and in fact, he started Fidelity Investments up in Dublin and grew it now. And then when he retired, then it's grown even further. I think there's about 2,000 people working across Ireland in Fidelity. There was none when
Wow.
he first started, and he reported straight into Ned Johnson, who is the owner of Fidelity and a billionaire. So he did incredibly well. So he was an inspiration to work towards. And like all of us, I have to say, all of us in some way or form, we want to impress our dads. We love our dads. They're our superheroes. So yeah, a little bit of that was down to me trying to do well. But also, I think, at the end of the day, you come in out of university and you want to make some money so you can buy a house, create a family, all that kind of stuff. And that was something that was a goal of mine. And I've got two wonderful children. I was married for 15 years, and I still have a good relationship with my ex-wife. So, I think that was something that was important to me. And because of that, I wanted to make sure I worked hard towards that, towards the leadership. In terms of my personality and character, I think, it wasn't ever, my goal to go out there and be a leader. It was my goal to go out there and make some money so I could have a nice life. And I think as you prove yourself in sales and then you prove yourself in sales management at a junior level, gradually then you just naturally go up the ranks. But I have to say, my favorite part of the whole job was always presenting to clients and developing long-term client relationships as well. And I'm still good friends with a lot of the people I was friends with in the financial services industry, even still now, and on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and everything like that. And that was the best thing. I think for me, loyalty was a very strong character trait. Good communication skills was a very strong character trait. And also trying to get to know the people on a heart level rather than just a head level, both as a manager, a colleague, and as somebody selling some product as well. And I never saw the client as a pound sign or a euro sign. I saw them as someone to make a potential long-term relationship with.
Mhm.
And then if that naturally led to business, brilliant. But that was not my underlying target, to begin with, if that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way that you were not seeing people as numbers, but as a real humans. Uh, Tell me now, after years of experience, uh, is there an internal conversation which you was leading with yourself in order to you become better and better?
Yeah, 100%. I actually it's interesting that when I gave up hockey in when I was 42, I look back now and realize that was probably the biggest instigator to my marriage failing. And
Wow.
the reason being is if I look back now, my identity was built around leading up towards that Saturday match every week. The captain of the team, passionate about the sport, and I absolutely loved it, absolutely loved it. And then when that went, you get to a point of identity of, hold on a minute, I'm mid 40s. What am I now? Who is Doug Gordon? And I had to rediscover that. And unfortunately, that affected me in terms of a state of self-love. I always had kind of like, a bit of kind of, positive energy and, confidence in myself. But I think sometimes we get to a certain point in our life, we think, who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing this for? And at that stage, I think between the giving up the hockey and getting to that kind of midlife kind of crisis or such. And also, I had a few ailments in terms of stress that led to a near death experience. All of those made me think again, okay, I need to look inward at myself because I always say in a lot of my talks, your results that you get in life come from the actions that you've taken, and they come from the decisions you've taken. They come from the habits that you've created, and they come from your mindset. In other words, how you think, speak, and act, or your personality. So if you change your personality, you can change your personal reality or the results.
Oh, I love that one.
So based on that, I had to really think to myself, what is it that I have in terms of having almost like a SWOT analysis of myself? What do I love doing? What am I good at doing? How can I add value to people? Super. That's the positive stuff. But then on the other side, I needed to take an inward look. What are my traits that I'm playing, the character traits, the flaws that don't serve me, that cause problems in my relationships or something like that? And I took a big deep dive. I actually went, after my marriage breakdown, I then went and saw a psychologist, a psychotherapist. I saw mindset coaches. I saw healers. I did lots of different things to work on the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual and the energetic side of things to be able to become a better version of myself so that when I went into other relationships, I was a better person in the relationship. I was always a good guy, always a nice guy, but I think I was playing out these certain things, these traits that sometimes we don't see in ourselves. And, a lot of the people, I have to say, I was speaking to one of my clients actually just yesterday, and this person was saying, oh yeah, I've done so much work on myself. I think I know it all. But they were still getting results and outcomes in their life that weren't matching that. And I think quite often now people can go on, they can listen to the Tony Robbinses, to the me, to the you, or whatever on YouTube and get kind of inklings and ideas of how they can become a better version. But unless you embody it and actually live it, you're just hearing it. So I think there's a massive difference between actually, truly living it and knowing it. And that was what I had to do. I realized I did know a lot of the stuff because I've always been into personal development from a very young age. But then at the same time, I needed to really bring it in and take it into, as we might call, our inner game or our inner self.
Brilliant, brilliantly said, and I really enjoyed to hear that part. Uh, Knowing that you, like all of us, have sometimes a self-doubts, doubting in yourself privately. How do you deal with that, with all the experience you have right now?
We all get self-doubt. I
Yeah.
literally, I have got clients who make 2 or 3 million a year and they have beautiful houses. They've got swimming pools in their basements that are like 25 meters long. They got saunas, jacuzzis, everything. Beautiful. I've been to their house. Absolutely gorgeous. They still have self-doubt at times. There is not a single person on this planet that doesn't get self-doubt. I know you've interviewed John Dean Martini, and he often says there is
Yeah.
a balance in the universe. There's a time where it's dark, and there's a time that it's light. There's time that there's good times, bad times, ups and downs. It's normal.
Seasons.
So just have that understanding that, when you're going through some difficult times, some dark times, try and learn from them, so you shine brighter in the light. And, there are times that I have self-doubt. Absolutely. I'll go through a stage where I might have 4 or 5 gigs, in a row in a 2 week period. And I think this is great. This is amazing. Wow. I've just earned XYZ and I've just helped XYZ people. And wow, I've got to travel to here and to there and brilliant and everything like that. And then next week, I might, suddenly have a week where, whatever, I've just come back from holiday or just come back from a load of trips and I haven't, got the next thing going on. And I suddenly get to the end of the week going, "Ooh, I didn't earn anything that week. What's going on?" Or, you earn from the naturally from selling the books and the passive income from the courses. But actually in doing this stuff, sometimes then you need to go, okay, I need to go back in, do some more lead generation, do whatever, contact people, ring people, whatever, and build up the funnel again as such. So we do get self-doubt all the time, and especially when you've been like myself, when I worked in the corporate world, in the hedge fund mutual world as a very senior person, and you have that constant income coming in, and it's very well, I would say easier than being an entrepreneur. People then sometimes, they do get self-doubt because they think to themselves, am I doing the right thing? Or would it be easier just going back into the corporate world? And sometimes I think sometimes it can be. So it depends. It's not for everybody. I mean, being an entrepreneur, sometimes I find myself working till 3 or 4 at night. And that's just something that I do because I enjoy what I do. And, sometimes I work American hours as well. I've done, talks at 8 p.m. at night over in Los Angeles when I'm in the UK. But that's just how it works. So you have to understand that we all are going to get self-doubt. And what I always do to myself is I sit down and I write it all down and I ask myself, is this really going to matter in the future if it's something that we're upset about? Or on the flip side, if it's something that I need to do, what action can I take now to make a difference tomorrow? And that's the important thing, because if you wallow too much in your self-doubt and start playing it over and over again, it's just going to waste time and energy. Whereas if you can go, okay, let's sit down, let's write down what I need to do, let's do a meditation, visualize what I need to do, and then let's actually take some action. And I have a thing in my book where I say, if you want to make something happen, the MAKE acronym is mindset. Have the right mindset. Do that meditation. Get yourself into the right zone. Actions. Take action in terms of picking up that phone, making that email, doing an extra reel or whatever it is. Whatever you need to do that. And then knowledge is, know your client, know your product, know your industry, match your client needs to your USPs to work out, okay, who do I know? Who can I contact? And then E is energy, in terms of bringing that energy to it, in terms of when you have that self-doubt, change your state, turn your state around, turn your mindset around to actually take action. And when you take action, you start to get into the action, you get into the zone, you get into the flow, and you just find things start coming to you naturally. It's when we get stagnant and we start, reveling in the self-doubt and reveling in the past and all that kind of stuff, that's when problems happen.
That's brilliant. Mentioning that you have been working and you work with people who are making even a millions or a couple of millions a month. I want to ask you, what fear shows to high-level people on a higher stages that they're not ready for?
Well, a lot of really, really top performers are incredible sometimes in work and incredible at doing deals. But when they come out of that dopamine hit environment where, they almost have to be, happy in the silence, shall we say, sometimes they struggle with that. And also sometimes they struggle with their relationships, with their family, with their friends, with their, wives or husbands or anything like that. And I think it's important to be very grounded and to be important to compartmentalize both work and then time with your family and spending relationship time with people as well. Because as a man, I can tell you, I know a lot of guys who will be with their wives and they'll be thinking about their next deal, their next presentation, their next big meeting, and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they're not present in the moment. And I think it's really important to be able to help be present in the moment. And the other thing that I find sometimes is what drives a lot of guys sometimes is, you mentioned earlier on about, was I trying to impress my dad? Yes, I was, because I love him and everything like that. And sometimes what happens is when we start off in business at a young age, we decide we want to have the car, we want to have the house, we want to have that holiday, we want to have the toy of some sort. And we think we'll be happy when we have this. Then we think we'll be happy when we have that. And we think we're happy, and we get there, and we're never happy. And it's the same. I see that a lot. People get promoted. They start off in client services, then they get into sales and they get settlement, and they think they're going to be happier and happier and happier and happier. But actually, it's the importance of being able to be happy in yourself. And the second thing is, I would say, in terms that links into that, in terms of the happy factor, is that when you're making decisions and when you're doing business, it's to change, and I help people do this, in terms of change from the mindset of this head self, ego self, to look in a state of service of what do I do that I add value to people, coming from a place of heart. Because then that changes the energy. So, for example, when I was in the corporate world selling financial products, at the time, I thought it was kind of transactional. Now, I look back and actually think, hold on a minute, we had a good product that was actually performing well. So it was helping that granny or grandpa retire younger, give more to their children, more to their grandchildren, buy a better retirement home, or give more to their charity. So actually, by me selling my product to somebody that gives them a better performance and a better investment portfolio and a better pension, I'm actually helping them have a better life. So if you can take the connection in terms of energy about what you do, in terms of the task you do, the job you do, whatever it is, and how it adds value to people, and live through that rather than the dopamine hits of the wins and the deals and the money, that'll give you a lot more fulfillment in what you do, and you'll probably, ironically, perform better as well.
Mm. Very deeply thoughts on that because when you say the ego, I am of a believer that ego can so many times kill the people's deals by them thinking that they know all the best, that they're the best. Because how you grow your success, you probably start building some ego as well in the way, look at me, I did that, look at me, I did that. And then it's kind of hard to get rid of that. Mm, tell me, in your opinion, what's the most dangerous lie people can tell to themselves in the way of entrepreneurial world?
Well, the most dangerous one is that they're the finished product.
Yeah.
None of us. I've read hundreds of books. I've been to loads of courses with loads of what they call gurus. And I have a degree and a master's and many other things as well. And I know I'm not the finished product. I know that every single day we can learn something from someone different. And the other thing as well, I remember slightly egotistical, but I went to India and I went to visit the Dalai Lama, and I thought the Dalai Lama was going to be my guru and how great it would be and all that kind of stuff. When I went to India, I realized every single person you meet is a guru in their own right. Every single person you meet has a story to tell, a tale to tell, something that's happened to them that's unique to them. And if you are curious and ask the right questions, you can find out things and learn from every single person. I learned from the taxi drivers. I learned from the receptionists at the boutique hotels I stayed at. I learned from so many different people. I actually spent time in India meditating and having dinner with a guy who was a student Tibetan artist who
Well,
was fascinating to find out about his life, his growing up, which was completely different to mine. So there is something that everybody that can teach you if you take time and haven't got an ego about, oh, this person doesn't have as much money as me, so I'm not going to talk to them. If you take time to be curious about everybody you meet and think of them as synchronistically coming into your life to teach you something in some way or form, or you helping them in some way or form, then you make life so much more interesting and you can continue to learn rather than think you know it all.
mhm. What does pressure feel like right now at the moment where you operate? How do you deal with it?
Well, pressures. I have two kids that have got school fees and university fees to pay for. I've got rent to pay for, bills to pay for. So when you're an entrepreneur, you can't take the foot off the gas. You have to make sure that you're constantly filling the funnel. You have to make sure you're constantly selling. And one of the hard things, I think one of the biggest pressures that I've had is that when I was selling a corporate structured product like a mutual fund or a hedge fund or something like that, it's much easier than selling yourself. Because I've had people where I would be selling and selling and selling like a corporate product and they never say anything to me other than, oh, he's doing a great job. He's really pushing the product and everything like that. But then when I start selling myself and my own services, sometimes people, especially my friends, they go, God, Doug, you keep going on about yourself and what you're doing. And I said, no, I'm going on about what my products are, what my services are, and what I'm doing to add value to people. So I think that pressure is quite hard, is to be able to balance and look at
Mm.
yourself and go, am I selling this to be able to add value to people and showcase my service, or am I doing this to make myself look wonderful? And, there is a balance of that, which you have to be careful of. And it can be stressful at times. I teach one of my talks is high performance success without the stress. And all of us have some kind of stress at stages. Anybody who has a child, especially a teenager, will have stress. So, I've gone through that now. My kids are growing, one's 20, one's 18, and but it's you have to learn. I mean, like, parenting is one of the hardest things that puts you under pressure. As a divorced guy, you always want to make sure that your kids are happy, and that's not always the case, especially in my scenario. So I went and saw, even with that scenario, I went and saw a parenting psychologist to try and learn how to cope with teenagers. Because we want to. I'm always trying to learn. And I don't know. People think they're great parents, but we're all learning every single day. I think I'm a good parent. My 20-year-old son and I, and and my daughter, we've got a great relationship. But at the same time, I have to say it's hard for parents. So there's pressure in lots of different ways.
I can feel with that. The reason is because I'm a father of a 10-year-old boy, and like I feel that my pressure is slightly increasing because of the way how he grows and the way what he needs and everything else. When we speak about leadership, one of the things is what we all constantly deal with, making decisions. And personal part of making decisions, it's very deep with me because I grew up in a family where making decisions was by how expensive or cheap they are. Can we
Hmm.
make them or not according to the money? Not never we guessed are they good or bad decision. The first thing was the money. Later on, it took me a lot until I came to that point to start making decisions about their outcomes. But two questions rises for me right now to ask you and to learn from you. First one is how do you make decisions nowadays?
Hmm.
And how important really speed is in making decisions?
Ooh, great questions. And actually, this one's quite hard to, answer at times. Even, I was speaking yesterday only to a very big organization, I won't say who it is, and they do at times. Like they were asking me to come in and do a talk on decision making, on communication, and everything like that. And I had to think about it because obviously I don't work in the organization. So I almost thought to myself, well, maybe I need to go in and do training with them to be able to understand each individual output from the individuals. But in a kind of a generalist point of view, based on me in the corporate world at a senior level and me as an entrepreneur now as well, I think you need to be very understanding of what are the pros and cons of each individual decision. And also, if you're going to be working with people as well, you need to make sure, for me, it's very important to be authentic. It's very important to have trust, and it's very important to add value from a place of heart. In terms of helping other people as well. So there, when you have your values in place, they can help in terms of forming your right decision making. But I think, other things that I do, which would be more holistic, is I would sit down and I do a meditation and I'd ask the question. Quite often, what I do is I would put the question at the top of a piece of paper. Should I work with this person, or what can I do in this situation, whatever it might be. Then I would sit there and I would breathe into my heart, maybe do the Navy box breathing technique when you do 4 seconds in, hold 4 seconds, 4 seconds out, hold 4 seconds, and keep breathing like that. I would then really go into myself, calm myself down, almost connect with my heart, as I would describe it. And then I would come out and I would start writing down whatever came into my head of ideas without thinking about it. And I would write as many ideas, pros and cons, as possible about the decision that I need to make if it's an important one. And then at the end, then I wouldn't look at it straight away because there might be emotion there. I'd go away and then come back an hour later and then read everything I've written and see what really, lights me up here. And then that can really help as well. Because also there's another way out you can discern in terms of quite often, if there's a decision to be made, oh, will I marry this woman, or will I go to that country and live there, or something like that. Sometimes you can just put yourself in a situation where you can feel it in the body. So, for example, I quite often when I think, should I go with this person in terms of making business with them? If I feel it in my heart, I know it's a good thing. If I feel a kind of like a bit of a funny thing in my stomach, I think,
Mm.
I need to look at this as well. So you can actually discern decisions based on how your body feels rather than getting wrapped up in here sometimes as well. Obviously, I write down all the pros and cons. Obviously, sometimes you can draw a line down the middle of the piece of paper and write down all the pros, all the cons, and try and work out whether it's worthwhile doing it. But also, if it's something to do, a business, you look at okay, what are the financials? Now, let's take an example. For example, if there was a gig to do, now I generally get paid every single time to speak. But if there is a gig where it's a charity event where there might be 1,000 people there, sometimes that's worthwhile doing for two reasons. One, you can give back to the charity and everything like that. So it can be part of you helping other people. And two, you never know who could be in the crowd. And somebody else could go, you know what, that was a really good speech. I'd like to bring you into my business or something like that as well. So you need to think on two sides of the coin, but then you need to value yourself as well and understand, hold on a minute, no, I am a professional speaker. I get paid XYZ every time I speak. I need to value myself in that respect as well. So you need to weigh up the angles of making sure, and there'll be some charity events that I'll actually be paid for, and some events I might do if I feel it's really, really important to make sure I add value in some way or form. So there's lots of decision ways you can do it. I'm sure a lot of people know their own way of doing it as well.
Yeah, but it's interesting to hear your one, and I love it. I love that you're trusting your gut feeling because so many times maybe something is logically looking reasonable to do it, but still, if it doesn't feel you and it doesn't feel that you want to walk those shoes, then definitely it's the right thing to not make that decision. Uh, no, I want to ask you something about business mistakes because I'm somebody who led few businesses. I'm somebody who made 100, if not 1,000 mistakes in those leading, and most of them come from not being ready for facing such a problems, but also most of them come in my 20s because the first company I ever started, it was international company in 26. And the amount of mistakes and the amount of money lost, it's like huge. But I want to ask you now, from all the people you worked with, what are the biggest mistakes people keep making, not being aware of them in the present moment?
Yeah, I think one of the first biggest mistake that I notice in a lot of people is the difference between revenue and profitability.
Oh,
You can go into a business and you can make a lot of money, but if you spend the money incorrectly in the wrong way, you can waste a lot of money as well. So I think it's very important. We talked about decision making, and one of the biggest decision makings that I find sometimes difficult is understanding where I'm going to be putting my marketing budget towards in terms of, are you going to spend on adverts? Are you going to spend on lead generation? What is it you're going to spend on to try and bring the business in the best possible way? So that I can see, I've seen a lot of people who've actually, revenue-wise, actually made some, decent business out of it. Some people have made, I know, they started a business up and very rapidly made million or two quid. But I've also seen businesses, but then they spend too much. But I've also seen businesses as well, which a big mistake. One of my friends actually did this. He actually was running a business and they grew too quickly and he didn't plan in advance of the infrastructure to be able to take the new clients that were coming on board so rapidly. And once that happened, then the reputation of the company was damaged and they ended up going bust. So I think it's you need to be very strategic and careful of your future planning of what you're trying to do. You need to be brave enough to bring people on to work with them at an earlier stage sometimes as well to make sure that you can start the infrastructure build in that side of things as well. Other things that I've seen as well, big mistakes that people have made, and I would have made this if I hadn't been lucky, is there's a lot of people who decide, they want to leave the corporate world to set up like a coaching business or a speaking business or something like that. And they don't realize how much work it takes to begin with. And they don't realize that, there's so many people out there and it's so competitive. Myself, I look at different pillars and being able to sell yourself. So number one, have you got performance track record? Well, I've got 100 plus LinkedIn recommendations. I've got 5 global awards from proper institutions. And I've been on radio, TV, and loads of podcasts. And I've been on front covers of magazines, not paid, and, in the Times and the Independent for success in building businesses. Like, if you don't have them, if you suddenly decide you've gone on a Tony Robbins course and you're going to give up your job and suddenly become a coach or a consultant with no background, no performance, no track record, you're going to struggle for the first few years until you've built that up. And that's one of the things. And the reason why I wrote the book, and I actually wrote that book myself as well, rather than getting like a ghostwriter or anything like that, is because by having the book, then you can use it as a business card. And also when I go and like I was speaking at another event a couple of weeks ago, and there was like 80 people there. It was they're all high level, C-level guys. They paid me obviously XYZ or whatever thousand for speaking, but they also all bought a book. So by having the book, it cements and anchors each individual event, but also people can see what you do and they gives you more credibility. Getting out there and showcasing yourself on stage all around the world helps a lot as well. Getting the performance track record, getting the testimonies, all of those put in place. So the biggest mistake that I think I see in business, especially in my field, is that people give up. Even like I'm talking top level guys who are earning £500,000 to £1 million a year. They give up and they start thinking they're going to suddenly become this super duper coach or consultant or whatever, and it doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah.
The difference of having, a team around you, a corporate structure around you, and doing it yourself and building a team, it's big difference. And I think that's a mistake that people make as well. They think they can do it without having the experience to do it as well.
Mm. Is there anything what can actually be disappointing about success?
Well, yeah. I mean, the number one thing in terms of the disappointing about success is when you get wrapped up in your ego.
Mm.
And, I've had times in the past, I've stood on stage in front of X thousand people at, whatever convention center. And then the next day you're sitting at home in your pajamas, thinking, oh, hold on, I was the superhero yesterday and now I'm just back to, that is hard in terms of that kind of ego thing as well.
Mm.
And also, what we discussed about earlier on as well, in success, sometimes you start getting lots of deals coming in and the deals can come like this and like this and like this and like this. And then boom, they're gone. I was talking to a guy, I was actually coaching a guy in presentation and communication skills the other week, and he was in here. I'm not going to say what the industry was, but he was the most senior person in his industry. And he then left the industry and set up a business to do with the industry. And he did incredibly well with that as well, getting deals and boom, 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 all that kind of stuff. Then he gave that up in his 60s and then he got cancer. And we discussed, why do you think he got cancer? And he knows it was because it was a stress related thing where he didn't feel he had anything to go towards. He had no purpose in life. And suddenly he's just sitting around there having had all this dopamine hits all the time. And then suddenly it's gone. So I think it's very important to be comfortable in the silence in terms of those dopamine hits, in terms of when you get that success, if that makes sense.
Make a lot of sense because you're explaining something what is very close to burnout in the
Yeah.
way that people can come to that point. And I would like to ask you, is burnout a failure in some sort of success journey or the system they built or how you see that?
So burnout, I think, can be a few things. One of the biggest things I think I've seen in burnout is that when people are following something purely for money and they're
Mhm.
working really, really hard and like they're working so hard for just money and they don't have an enjoyment and love for what they do, a sense of purpose of why, that can cause burnout very, very quickly. Whereas I'll be honest with you, Nick, I don't know, I would do 10 of these podcasts a day. I would stand on stage 3 times a day, every single day, and never burn out because I love it, because I know I'm trying to add value to people. I'm trying to give insights from my learnings, where I went wrong, where I learned things to be able to help other people so they don't have to go through the same stuff themselves.
Amazing.
Or get there quicker, faster, and easier. So I think, and burnout as well can happen even when you do have that, is when you then build up and then suddenly, let's say you are great at bringing up, doing the personal development stuff, helping people with performance optimization, everything like that. But then you bring in a team and you're trying to do all of the stuff that you normally do and then manage a team. That can be difficult because there can be people who are superb coaches, superb presenters, superb motivators and inspirers, but trying to balance all of that, which is what they really love doing, and then managing people's issues and problems in terms of staff, that can then sometimes cause burnout as well, especially if you are a nice person like myself and you're trying to people please too many people, if that makes sense as well.
Mhm.
So sometimes you have to know when to say no, and you have to know when to put boundaries in place as well so that you can manage your energy carefully so you're not spreading yourself too thin and you can focus on what you want rather than what you don't want.
Cool. Very nice share, though. Uh, when You work with so many people. I believe that there are some cross paths. The situations where you say, aha, okay, that's a pattern. Happened to him, it happened to her, it happened to him. Uh, what's the one internal quality that most of successful entrepreneurs share?
Discipline and focus. I
Hmm.
think, you can be as motivated as you want, you can be as inspired as you want, but if you're not disciplined for the smaller habits every single day, that's the difference between success and failure. It's doing that meditation every day. It's doing that run every day. It's eating healthily every day. All of those are incredibly important. It's keeping the communication up with your team if you're a manager, a leader. It's making sure that they feel wanted, part of the team, rewarded, appreciated. All of those kind of things are incredibly important. I've worked in teams where, yeah, they've been paid a lot of money, but sometimes actually, just being able to appreciate them in a public state, saying, you know what, Nick, I just want to thank you so much for all the work you've done in the last quarter in front of everybody else within the team or within the organization. That can mean more to people sometimes than actually a massive amount of money. And that's sometimes people are just looking for appreciation and being seen rather than just being paid money. So I think it's very important to remember that. I think also, it's very important to remember, to communicate effectively. The biggest problems in work, in life, in everything is miscommunication. I always say the relationships, if you break that word down, relationship, there's a ship that goes in a direction, and you need to put yourself and your team or yourself and your clients on board the ship traveling in the right direction. In order to do that, you need to relay in terms of conscious communication and active listening. Remember, we have two ears and one mouth and use them in that proportion. Most people don't. Your shuns, and that will be your expectations and your intentions, or in this case, communications, to be able to put yourself on board that ship, traveling in the right direction of what you're trying to achieve in that relationship. But what people most do, they make assumptions. And when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me in terms of that word. And when you make assumptions, you're not asking the right things, which are questions. And you and I, Nick, we see the world in a completely different way. And everybody who's listening to this now, you will see the world through your lens because you're a product of your parents, preachers, teachers, and past relationships and experiences. So that means that you might be explaining something to one of your colleagues or your clients or something like that, and they just don't get it. It could be a partner even, and they don't get it. And that's where you need to stop and realize that they just have a completely different perspective. So you need to ask questions to understand what they're seeing, what they're understanding, so that you can kind of relay and communicate through their lens rather than just yours, if that makes sense. And miscommunications is one of the biggest causes of breakdowns of relationships and businesses failing as well.
My biggest takeaway so far is this very well explained that we're having 2 ears and one mouth and we should use it in that ratio. It's beautifully said.
I have a great story, Nick, on that. So there was a guy at one of the biggest investment banks in the world. I won't mention who it is, and a great guy. Let's call him Bob for the sake of the argument. And my CEO, who was my direct boss at a particular company, told me, "You'll never get to see with him. I work with him all the time. He doesn't suffer fools gladly. He doesn't like salespeople, sales directors. You won't get to see him." Anyway, I obviously added value as much as possible again and again with emails, with context to do with the industry, everything like that. Eventually, I got a half-hour meeting with him. Turned up, and I arrived, and let's call him Bob. And I said, Bob, tell me a little bit about yourself. And he started telling me. I said, and tell me about your portfolios, how you run them. And he told me. I said, and how does that work? And he told me. And all I did was ask simple questions to get him talking. And we ended up going from the half hour to an hour. I left. I went and did a couple of other meetings. I got back into the office later on, and my boss came up to me and he said, "Doug, what did you say to Bob?" And I was like a bit shocked. I said, I don't know. What do you mean?" He said, "You're the best salesperson he's ever come across." I said, "Well, I don't know how, because I think I spoke for 5 minutes. He spoke for 55 minutes. But that really shows you the power of questions and the power of listening, exactly what you just said. And that is the difference between being successful in business and, gentlemen out there, being successful in finding yourself a nice wife. So, ask questions to understand and shut this and use these, and it makes a massive difference.
Doug, can anybody be a leader? Good leader.
Um, yes, if they work on themselves first. or they are just a natural leader. I think some people who've gone through difficult times when they're a child, that could have been, I'm not going to go through with trauma stuff, but if there was something traumatic that happened to them as a child, and they are bringing that in through their nervous system into their future self, or their working self in the present moment now, then your emotions are energy in motion, and when your emotions are all over the place and your nervous system is not rationally thinking, shall we say, you're not going to be a good leader. Because if you get triggered by other people because they have different opinions, or you get triggered by people who are trying to ask you things in the moment, and you're not able to balance that through, rational thinking and balancing your emotions, balancing your stress, it's going to make it very difficult to be a leader. So I would say, number one, I would say money's in exchange for energy, time, knowledge, and experience. So make sure you manage your energy. And secondly, make sure you're in your rational brain rather than your monkey mind. So that if you are there and you're rationally thinking, you'll make rational decisions and you'll help bring your whole team along, and you'll be a good leader.
Do you believe that leadership can be taught in its core or revealed under the pressure? That some things cannot be just taught?
Well, both. So something that I teach leaders, which is slightly different than other coaches, is because I have my coaching side and I also have my holistic side. So I'm like a master teacher healer of 5 modalities of healing. I'm also a trained mental health practitioner and trained mindset coach. And what I try and bring into leadership is for them, like we talked earlier on about making decisions from their heart and making rational decisions as well. Quite often, a lot of leaders, especially in the old days, were in some way traumatized by a parent in some way or form, and
Hmm.
they decided they're going to go out there and they're going to make it happen. And
Show
they
the world.
did. Yeah, and they did because they worked really hard. But sometimes if they look at the past, they kind of bulldoze people out of the way to get up to the top. Whereas what I try and teach people to do is to connect with themselves in the highest level so that they come from a heart space and so that they can bring people together through inspiration rather than just motivation. Because motivation, if you look at that word, it comes from motive, which is a reason, which is outside you, which sometimes can be like beating people over the head with a stick. Whereas inspiration comes from the word in spirit, which it means it comes from inside you in a place of heart. So if you can get people who are inspired and in that state of inspiration, and you can then work on their discipline and focus as a leader, you can bring them in there. But in order to do that, you need to first work on yourself, making sure that you're disciplined, you're focused, your communication skills are good, and you can bring people together in a collaborative environment in terms of a team rather than creating too much competition. And by doing that in a positive way, then people will follow you even in the shit times, even the tough times. And that's what's really important to be able to do. And you can teach that because I teach people to get into their heart self all the time. I teach people to try and, reduce the ego because I've had to do that myself all the time. And, it's lived experiences, and these lived experiences can then help. And also I've trained with a lot of people and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's most important if you've gone through it and you've grown through it and you're kind of glowing through it, then you can turn your mess into a message and give it meaning to help other people in some way or form.
When you said right now word message, what would be your message for everybody who listen us or watch this show right now and they're starting their business? They're in the middle of journey of their business or in some sort of success in their business. What would you advise to them?
Well, in my book, I have an acronym and it's GLEAM. So it's gleam your business out, or gleam your best self out to your clients, or gleam your best self out to your team if you're a leader, right? And G stands for goals, making sure that you put very clear, defined goals in place of what you're trying to achieve within the business and for the future, and make sure they can collaborate those goals together for everybody together. Second, E and G, as well as giving with grace. So, like I said earlier on, is don't look at your potential clients as a number. Look at them in a state of grace, in a state of service, where you give and try and serve. That's the second part. And business is all about relationships. And when you give in relationships, you get more back, not out of intention of trying to get back, but you naturally will because you'll be giving, giving, giving. And eventually they will go, this person's a really good person to work with. I want to do that as well. L is about letting go of fear, because fear is one of the worst things that stops people going forward within the businesses. So number one, let go of fear. And number two, an L as well, is learn. Tiger Woods has a coach. Rory McIlroy has a coach. Messi has a coach. Ronaldo has a coach. They are all the best of the best in their industry, but they still have a coach, not necessarily because the coach is any better than them. It can just he or she can sometimes see things that they can't see and also help them mastermind themselves up to a better level by holding them accountable and responsible in some way or form. So learn from somebody else and learn from somebody else who's gone there so you can get there quicker, faster, easier. E, in terms of, when you're in business, emotional intelligence is one of the most important things. It includes self-awareness, being self-aware of your own areas that you're not so good at, so you can bring in people into your business, maybe to fill those gaps of your skill sets that you haven't got. If that makes sense. Also, in terms of awareness, in terms of emotional intelligence, it is about situational awareness, market awareness, people awareness, and even client awareness as well. So having all of those together is very much important in terms of emotional intelligence. Also, I mentioned emotional intelligence is about conscious communication. So make sure you're consciously communicating with your team, with your clients, and most importantly, with your own self as well. A is authenticity and action and accountability. So, in terms of authenticity, people buy trust in business. So be your authentic self so that you create trust with other people and you will find business comes to you more naturally. I always get paid on time because I'm authentic. And because of that, I attract authentic people as well. Action is massive. As you know, there's a lot of people who kind of we talked about The Secret Book earlier on because both of us have interviewed a few people in that film and that book. You can't just sit there meditating and visualizing it. You have to take massive action. So put a plan in place, whatever it might be, of how you can take different forms of action in different ways to create the business in what it needs to be. And that's strategy and planning, obviously, which is linked to that action. And then finally, M is meaning and modeling. So meaning is have that state of, why am I doing this? What is the why in terms of the business that you're doing? Is it just about making money? Well, that's not going to really help you in the tough times. It's got to be about something that you're passionate about, that's going to get you up in the morning with passion and purpose to drive you even when your energy is low to create something special in terms of that business. And then finally, model the masters. Have a look at the competition, work with people like me and you so that you can learn and grow as quickly as possible, but utilize ideas from other people. In my radio show, which was a national radio show, and now I've got a sponsored podcast, I've had 350 people plus on there. They are sports stars, film stars, global leaders, and other people, New York Times bestsellers. And the reason being I interview them is so I can learn from them. And by learning from other people and modeling other people, hopefully you'll help your business model be successful and gleam in some way or form.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. And for me, it was a real pleasure. I learned a lot of new stuffs, and I'm really grateful for you bringing all this wisdom today on this podcast episode. Thank you, though.
My pleasure, Nick. Thank you for having me on. I wish you the very best. And anybody
Likewise.
listening to this as well, I wish you the best as well.
Thank you so much.